The venue is a venue, right? The venue is a shell. But the thing that we can do here is definitely something that seems to matter to a lot of people, which makes me like just genuinely delighted. You know, I have a lot of fun doing the production stuff, but that it also seems to actually really land in the way that I'd hope it would. My name is Eleanor Saitta, and I live here at The Attic, which is a venue for queer performance art, comedy, music, fashion, politics, etc. I'm also a painter and a photographer and a LARPer and a general tinkerer with systems and stories. We found this place before I decided that I was going to move to the country. Our ability to do these things here is kind of what makes it makes sense for me to live here. Mm-hmm. So it really, in a lot of ways, it is a venue before it's an apartment, because it has to hollow out, right? Kind of the first priority, we can't have furniture that won't let us seat 60 people in here. It has to have that kind of empty space available in it. It is really a venue first. Like, the venue drives the furniture decisions. The venue drives decorating decisions. The venue definitely drives lighting decisions, you know. The big show that's probably the one that more people have heard of is the Attic Underground. It's a variety show, basically. So it is queer drag, it's burlesque, it's stand-up, it's you know, kind of this potpourri of different stuff. It's performance art. And it has a few different goals. One of them is to blend those different mediums, all of which are either explicitly queer culture, like from the drag world, or more queer burlesque, etc., but to kind of give the set of queer live arts a single space where they can talk to each other a bit. The other thing it works to do is to be the kind of room that doesn't necessarily exist elsewhere, at least in Helsinki, where it's a room that you can do stuff that you can't do on a commercial stage, either because it's too personal, it's too new, it's too raw. It's a piece that like has a lot of personal meaning, and you can't quite do it in front of an audience that you don't trust for the first time. Like, that's the thing that we want to be, is the stage where both we can take new people in. You know, we can make a space that is probably one of the most reliably friendly audiences in town for people who aren't, maybe they're kind of baby performers, or this is their first show at whatever, that kind of thing. We can give them a place where they can perform comfortably, but also folks who've been, you know, performing for ages and that kind of thing, but just have something that pushes the boundaries a little bit further than you can do in a commercial venue. We've had a few pieces premiere here that have then gone on to much bigger stages. I'm thinking of Lola Vanilla's act that she did at the National Theatre. That communion, which it was actually fascinating, like, that premiered here, and it was an incredibly personal, powerful act, and, you know, really, like, it felt like we'd all gone to church. Like, it had that kind of like communal religious experience thing, and it also had that at the National Theatre. It landed very differently. It was still very powerful, but it was interesting to see the change that comes, you know, doing that in that big of a room. She said something about having kind of had that act in her head for a decade, but there was never a stage that she could do it on. The other thing we do, which I think is something that makes that space special, is, of course, there's a conversation after, where we have space for queer artists to actually talk back about who they are and what their work is and what their work means, which isn't a thing that, you know, as you say on stage, it's not a thing that certainly drag people normally get to do. I think even a lot more than when I moved here, this place is a political project as much as it's an artistic project, you know, and it's about saying that queer culture is something that we take seriously, and that queer culture deserves a place in this part of town, in a room like this, you know, with like really actually deep attention paid to production details and that kind of thing. I've watched some really, you know, people who are really now increasingly polished performers grow, which is really just kind of amazing to see. You know, folks who I think will end up, you know, are already, but will end up being significantly international performers even. So that's definitely been just like, you know, that's been a joy to get to see. And I think in general, as the community kind of gathers a certain critical mass in a scene and a structure, which I know is a process that's been going on for, you know, I've seen the last third or whatever, you know, but it is it does feel like the bar is getting raised, and that people are, not that the required level of polish is going up, but that the accessible level of polish is going up as performers learn what's possible, work on their art, see each other work, like that. When you have performers who are starting to get very good, but who are still committed to community, rather than just kind of going off into the like commercial drag circuits or whatever, it does end up kind of raising all boats that way. So that's really neat to see. I would love to see more, especially drag, because I guess it's sort of, if there's one home art for the Attic Underground, it is drag. And I would love to see more drag performers taking the intellectual side of their work more seriously, which also means having space and language and resource, this isn't an unfunded mandate on them. This is it's a complicated thing, but I'd love to see more folks having the space to take it really seriously and seeing how that changes the work. What else? More, more weird stuff, more uncomfortable stuff. I've had a few conversations with friends in the past few months about kind of how Helsinki could be a bit weirder, just a little bit. I had a couple friends come through town, had dinner a couple of times, and couldn't get them to stay in the country for more than 36 hours. If you're not here for the community, it is kind of a very boring town. There's not a lot of weird here. There isn't that kind of accessible weirdness and accessible culture. And yeah, I don't know. I was actually talking to a friend on the innovation team for the Urban Planning Union, both about architecture and permitting structures and all of this kind of stuff, how there is a lot of both inertia and conservativeness, et cetera, which has kind of channeled culture work and channeled a lot of things into this very kind of, everything works and it's very pleasant and it's all the same sort of mold. If we look at everything from like the complete lack of COVID support for artists, especially freelance artists, especially, low culture freelance artists through the pandemic, and also just the grant structure in general, where Finland spends so little money on art compared to its neighbors and shockingly gets, the results that you'd expect. We should have a national strategic priority to make Finland weird, to actually support arts and culture for real and to understand them, that they are an actual structural piece of the civic fabric of the city and the nation. If there's a place where the Attic is in conversation with the larger cultural scene, that's it. That's kind of at the core of it.